So my name is Pierre-Carlo Ortañez. My education background, I actually have multiple associate's degree. I have one in automotive, residential, commercial, and I actually got my certificate in controls also. And I took all of them at Riverside City College. And as far as my experience, I'm a certified electrician in the state of California. I did my apprenticeship there, and after I finished my apprenticeship, I started looking for jobs that are more local. That's when I got into the maintenance side of things, and I started getting into more HVAC, and which comes in the maintenance also is a lot of controls. I wanted to be home every day, which there's more jobs in the maintenance side. Mm-hmm. And HVAC, as far as stationary engineer, they pay higher than just the electrical too, a little bit higher. I still like electrical, but it's really fulfilling to connect the electrical and being able to turn it on just using a computer and all that. So I really find that fun. I love troubleshooting, so now I'm not only troubleshooting the wiring, troubleshooting the program too. And that's the reason why I become an instructor, because I was out of town when I was in construction 4 days out of the week. The way I got into teaching was I wanted to have a formal education as far as in HVAC and controls. That's the reason why I went to school for all my HVAC degrees and certificate. And the instructor there saw that I'm excelling and found out that I have experience in this and decided that, I should start becoming an adjunct instructor first. I was doing that for 1.5 years. And then I got hired in another school for a full-time, but the instructor at Riverside wanted me to come back, and because they had the opening for a full-time, and that's when I got in Riverside City College as a full-time, which is last year in August 2022. I've been teaching mostly the electrical, but the adjunct instructor that we have for the controls, which you guys know is Ramiro, actually now he's full-time back at his school, so he doesn't have time, so I'm taking over the control classes at RCC. So Riverside City College, we have 3 associate's degree. They're under the umbrella of BESP, Building Energy System Professional. So that program has the HVAC in there also, which comes with the residential, commercial, and then there's an installation certificate also, and then controls certificate. And then the BESP has building inspection, and then the saving energy and all that. So energy auditing is under there too. Mm-hmm. So those are the classes that we have in there. The controls that we have is the EZIO, and then like everyone here, they're trying to move to contemporary controls too. Mm-hmm. And we do have Prolon, and we recently got in contact with someone that deals with Delta. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get that too, right? And we have the components for ALC, but we're still trying to get more training from the trainer to actually show us how to use their controllers and on that, their program also, their software. Well, as far as I know, Mount SAC teaches, right? Mount SAC, and then the other one I know of is Cypress, right? Yeah, Cypress.
They're a long ways away.
Yeah, well, Mount SAC is probably 30, 40 minutes away, and then Cypress is an hour. Most of our students are Hispanic. The majority is Hispanics, and then white. We have a couple of Asian, African Americans, and then the rest. We have morning classes and we have night classes. A lot of our morning classes tend to be students that just got out of high school, right? Because they don't work yet, so they're just, what do you call that? Kind of trying to get their feet wet, trying to see how the program is. So they're the ones that don't know exactly what they want to do, so they're just seeing HVAC. And a lot of times our beginning classes has a lot of more fun labs, you could say, right? And then later on, once you get to the advanced, it's more serious. But they tend to enjoy the beginning classes, and then they sign up. As far as the night classes, that's where we get the guys that have experience already, because they tend to work during the day, and they're trying to do a continuing education. You could say maybe the morning is more because most of them are fresh out of high school, so they just graduated high school, and they still have the school experience as far as learning, studying, and all that. But the night one, they are the guys on the field already, so as much as possible, they're there to just understand what they're doing much better on the field, right? Like the concepts of electricity, because I have students that they know how to wire things, but they don't understand what they're really wiring at that point, like how electricity really travels, how to troubleshoot some of the sensors or something like that. So, so one thing we have is we have dual enrollment. So we have some of the high school students that come, they bus, since we don't have a mobile trainer yet, that would be in the future. That's what we're thinking. They would bus the students to our school and actually take the classes there and get college credit for it too. So that's one of our classes that is full of high school students. I believe there was 24 of them that was taking the class. I didn't teach that class. It was the other instructor, but he was saying I think 16 are going to continue in the HVAC program. So, and we have visits from other high school that comes that we always talk to them about dual enrollment, right? Other opportunities like that. And we were mentioning in the future that we might have some mobile labs that we could probably go teach at their high school. So we've talked to other schools. One of them is College of the Desert. So they have a 30-foot trailer with all the lab equipment in there. That's why we tend to build our lab on the mobile side of things that we can move around for that purpose if we need to teach or planning on teaching somewhere else, like a high school, right? Like starts at 2, right? And they're following kind of more of the high school where they don't stay there for like 4 or 5 hours long. So they give them a 2 hours, so 2 to 4:15, I believe. And then they get bused back to their school.
So you offer one major AS degree or multiple AS degrees in the department?
Three AS degree. Residential, residential HVAC technology, commercial HVAC technology, and then the BESP, Building Energy System Professional. Those classes are more for the inspector, and there's a lot of code classes in there, which we have adjuncts that teach them online, and they're fully online. And that's actually one of the classes that we recommend once they finish all throughout the physical classes to keep taking, right? Because that's a good continuing education classes, because now you're learning the codes. There's a blueprint reading there, right? There's electrical code reading, plumbing, and all that. But of course, as we're going through the program, we talked about those, that this is code, that's not code, certain aspect of it, but now they're getting more specific on those. Yeah.
Do you build any of that content into the regular HVAC program?
Yes, yeah, we implement a lot of the codes that we talked about, we mentioned it. I would even sometimes pull my code book and I'll show them like, this is where all my statements are coming from because of this code, right? Size wiring, pulling power, and all that. That's part of it, actually, one of the classes. Net zero energy, right? That's one of the classes that's being taught by the other full-time instructor. So as far as solar, we've been having talks of starting to get more into solar also, but our space is really, really limited as of right now, right? So we're trying to get a much bigger room and maybe a new building in the future. We can't start getting solar panels. we really won't have room in there anymore. So the way our lab actually, because all of it is in a cart, is every time we have to start a class, we have to pull the ones that we're going to be using, and we work on them. At the end of the day, we have to push them aside because we're not going to have a lab room if they're all just out all the time. So it's a game of Tetris all the time, trying to. We have actually one or two equipment that's tied to the building permanently, just like this one. But as far as all our stuff, it's always in a car, because if we tie everything to the building, just like how the setup here is, we're not gonna have any room. But we teach commercial. So we have a air-cooled chiller that's in the back, right? We have a little outside lot. It's really tiny. I guess, it's probably the size of this hallway right here. There's a cage right here, and then that's about it. And some of the stuff gets stored outside there too. But we have an air-cooled chiller. We have 2 boilers. and then a water-cooled chiller, a cooling tower. So right now we just received it, so it's in the process of getting the maintenance are going to be putting power into it and the gas and plumbing. We're making use of our space for sure. As far as enrollment, we have around like almost 300, you could say. We have a lot of classes, right? As far as advisory board, we have multiple. We have the residential, which a lot of them are local, right? So I actually drive to their shop and talk to them personally to invite them to our advisory. And then commercial also. And we are actually partnership with our local union. And so we have all these different avenues of companies that we talk to for our advisory committee. Yeah. I think controls is going to dominate all of them. We already have a little control, like the Nest, but now they're going to implement it where same thing in a commercial building where it controls everything, right? Not just your AC. Now you're going to have the lights and all that, motion sensors, occupancy sensors. So it's gonna come to the residential also. I feel like controls is gonna go a lot bigger sooner or later, especially in California. Energy savings is a really big push. Well, we have that one class which is energy conservation. I keep forgetting the name, but it's Air 77. So that one's more on the Hertz rating. We have the kilowatt. So we show the students, you plug in one of your TV, and see how much energy consumption you get out of it at the end of the semester. And then this summer, we're gonna go to students' houses to actually do duct blasting and then blower door test. So we do that, we get to show how efficient your house is too, your ducts, how it affects your efficiency, right? So all that, and we have a thermal gun or a thermal imager that we could see, oh, you're missing an insulation right here, or this type of window compared to another type of window, how much heat is getting into your home. We actually go to minimum of 3 houses for that. Energy conservation class. So we get to see. One thing about me is I like to learn. So I would sometimes just go there and actually do the lab with them in class. And like I said, I went through the program too. So I actually did that with another instructor myself too. But I would go to, if I have time, I would go there and actually do the labs with them too, again, just to keep myself fresh and, keep learning something, right? As an instructor, that's a really big part of being an instructor is always learning, which I try to push to my students that if there's one thing they could take away from taking all these classes is to keep learning,
Yeah. How does that HERS Rater certification work? Do they have to take a test after that class, or?
We don't certify them, but that's the process they have. They actually have to take it themselves later on, yeah. And there's one class that actually teaches them what the process of that too, and it's one of the online ones. What we like to really do in our program is open all the doors, and so all the students can see the possibilities of being in our program, right? You could stay in residential if you want to. You could be in the commercial, right? And then you could be a HERS rating. We have 2 students that are in HERS rating that are taking classes because they want to improve themselves. And then you could be in the controls too. A lot of the times, all these opportunities are kind of being shown to them throughout the whole program. Not everyone's going to be in residential. Not everyone's going to be in commercial, right? Not everyone's going to be in controls. So we like to give them all the options. I even talk about that later on, if you get into more on the construction side of things, you could be superintendent, and that's where the BSP, where all the being an inspector too, that's where all your codes kind of come in, being able to read blueprint proficiently, right? So that's our main purpose in there, is to give all the pathways to the students, and we're giving them a little bit of taste of everything in each of these certificates and degrees that we offer. They work everywhere. We have a couple that are in residential, right? One works with SoCal Gas, or the company works with SoCal Gas, and they install a lot of furnaces, right? Gas furnaces and all that. And he's actually a story I always tell people, because some people would want to they hear about, oh, I want to start off $25 an hour, $30 an hour, starting off no experience, right? he was actually one of the guys that, he was like, you know what, I'm going to go in there and prove myself that I could do this. So he got into that company, which he has 2 years experience already installing. And he got into the company and they told him, we're starting you off at 17. And he was like, yeah, start me off. And he proved that he could do it a lot, like really good. So next thing you know, right before his six month being in the company, he was about to ask for a raise, and they just gave him a $10 raise right away because he's showing that he could do this, he could manage himself. And then now what they want him to start doing is kind of training the other guys coming in the company. So now he was saying that they're going to give him another $5 raise because of that. So less than a year, he's going to be past $30 an hour, right? Because of him just proving himself. And then we have commercial. We have a couple of companies that hired their students recently, actually. Allison Mechanical, right? MCOR, you probably heard of MCOR.
Oh, right.
We got 3 of our students in MCOR. One got hired from Siemens also. That's the controls aspect of it now. And one hired from the Hearst Rating Company. Yeah, that's more of a private-owned company. Siemens, I believe they started him off around 29, and then after training or probation, I think they bump you up to 34, and then it just keeps going up in there. So, and then residential, usually, let's say 17 to 20 starting. Commercial, depending if it's union, they start you off 25. But if it's non-union, usually 22, 23. We reiterate to students because we don't like to shut down residential. It's a good career also, right? So we tell them, even though they pay low, like, well, if you want to start your own business, this is usually how you're going to start, and then you keep moving up into the commercial. And not everyone can be hired at the higher end of things. There's going to be more hiring on the lower, but once you get your experience, because a lot of those bigger companies too that pay higher, they're always looking for 2 years experience. So start off 2 years right here, move to the next one, right? Pac Rim is Pacific Rim. We actually have 4 students that they hired, and 3 of them are still with them. They're big in San Diego, but they have a lot of jobs in LA also. So they just try to commute back and forth.
So those guys are making pretty good money, I bet.
Yes. It's all prevailing wage. Yeah.
Which is like $34 an hour or something.
Oh, more. So when I was prevailing wage, my electrical is more around $80 an hour, but that's because I was non-union. So they pay me the whole benefits too, right? If you become union, I think you're around 50.
Plus benefits.
Yeah, with the benefits. Yeah. They're probably around 30 plus by now. So. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're happy. That's one thing is they're glad, And the way that we get those contractors is we actually have a career day that we have. So they're part of our advisory committee too. And then we have career days where all the students, our HVAC students, prepare their resume and all that, and let them. Each contractor will have their booth. So we separate from residential contractors to the commercial. They all will have their booths, and they'll start talking to the students, and it's their choice who they want to pick. And if they want to ask, how is this student doing in class, then we're just honest. This student's always on time, this and that. So, yeah. So that's how we get our students pretty much in to get jobs. And we promote them actually getting jobs right away in the class while they're taking classes, because we notice quicker learning, right? Because what they learn in class, what we do in the lab, they're actually doing it on the field too. And then whatever questions they have in the field, they could bring it to us and ask us, right? So that's the way we do our classes, and that's the reason why we have our night classes. The night classes are all the commercials run in the night class because we expect them to be working by then. So. Mm-hmm. There's only a couple classes. Controls is the one that has a prerequisite. But as far as we want to be able for them to come in all directions, so usually the beginning of most of the classes is we talk about the basics, of things, right? Refrigeration cycle, some basic electrical. But controls is the only one that we have a prereq, which you need the beginning electrical and advanced electrical and beginning refrigeration for them to understand the concept of things.
And you don't have an electrical department. All your electrical is in-house?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's one thing that hopefully we create later on is a construction, because if we could put them all together, work as a team, and be able to do all of it, right? That would be more beneficial to the students, right? Like what you're learning, you could program it on the actual building. So.
Yeah, but it's, you know, I think it's a real luxury for them to have you as a journeyman electrician teaching the electrical for HVAC, because then you really know they're getting it, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, when I was taking the class, the instructor, funny story is, when I'm not one to show off and start telling people I'm this guy. I just keep quiet, and I was just taking the class, and he was making me do these labs, and I was just getting it, and the instructor was like, oh, I'm gonna make this harder for him, and he did another schematic drawing, and he said, here, see if you can wire that, and I just did it, and he was like, something's up. What's going on, you know? And that's when he pretty much, I said, I was like, well, I'm a journeyman electrician, so, and he was like, man, you should be teaching this. So that's usually the first taste of me. He was trying to see if I could teach too. So that's when, after that class, that's when he's like, have you thought about teaching? Right? So that's the reason why I started with the electrical classes, which, you know, more comfortable, and I know more aspect of it from the source all the way to the equipment, right? So.
Do you teach three-phase?
Yes. Yeah. Of course, I teach it really safe. I teach him three-phase power, right? Rotation, right? So one of my labs, actually, they just have a disconnect that you just connect it to a water pump, right? Of course, the pump's not connected. You just have the shaft, but they power the three-phase, right? Turn it on and just see. And if you switch the wire, it rotates the other way, right? Yeah. And then luckily we have, I don't know if you heard of delta high leg power, no. The one with the stinger leg, right? So what it is if you follow the code, A phase is 120 to A phase to neutral is going to be 120, B phase to neutral is going to be like 210, and then C phase to neutral is 120. That's why they call the delta high leg. So we have that power in our school, because it's an older school. So I get to teach him about the different powers that comes through, and then we actually have a 12208 also. So I show him that, oh look, each phase is just going to be 120 to neutral, not like the delta high leg one, you know, that the B phase becomes 210.
So you have 208 in your lab?
Yes.
And then do you have 480?
No, 240.
240.
Yeah. So the delta high leg is 120, 240. And then the other one, the Y one, is going to be a 120, 208. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we have two different power, yeah. Which I had to figure out myself when I was...
What does your chiller operate on?
Oh, that was going to be a three-phase 240. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Do you teach any motor controls?
Yes. Uh-huh.
You teach that yourself, or
well,
is it more in the controls?
Yeah, it's more in the controls pathway.
But you will teach it.
Yeah, I teach them. Well, they have to. That's part of it too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're already getting ready for those fall classes?
Yes, right. Yeah. So the way the automation, our classes, our controls classes work is, the first one is more the basic, and we teach them about pneumatics, because something new for them to learn. The second one's on the networking and programming, right? So they'll start messing around with routers and making their own Cat5, Cat6 cables and all that. And then the last one is where they implement it on actual units. to make it work, right? So, well, since our chiller is not on yet, we're just doing it on residential equipment, right? Like Bob said about just removing the board of a furnace and programming it so it works just like it has a board inside of them, but using the controller. But once our chiller, boilers, and all that, and air handler is all working, it's all set up, then that's actually the ones they're going to be controlling with those, right? And for them, hopefully they've learned the chiller class and they can just know how to control them, right? So,
is it, do you think students find it challenging to learn essentially 3 different disciplines? Your HVAC, the refrigeration cycle, all the physics and engineering and that, and then all the electrical, and then all that with networks and programming.
So,
is it kind of a challenging field for some of the students?
Of course, there are other students that find it really challenging to. I have different students that some of them are really book smart, but when it comes to actually wrenching and putting things together, they're awkward, right? They look awkward trying to put it together. And then there's some that are really good at they could put things together real quick. They understand mechanical, right? And on that, they could work with their hands quick, but the book is what becomes hard to them. So you see both sides. But as far as learning, we always tell them that everyone's always going to have their strong point and their weak point, and what they need to do is work on that weak point, right? Because your strong point is strong already, so let's work on this weak point, right? And as far as my teaching, I try to help them understand concepts in a more basic manner, right? As far as I was just talking to one of the other instructor about it, is like, why does hot goes to cold, or why does high pressure goes to low pressure, right? Because if you want to think about it as far as the laws of energy, right, you can't create it. So when like a temperature, let's say 100 degrees, and then there's 0 degrees, the 0 degrees doesn't have any more energy to give to that 100 degrees. So the 100 degrees can give to the 0 degrees to even it out. And once I start talking about that, same thing with the pressure, right? If a pressurized tank, same thing. That's when they start getting it and understanding it. And same thing with the refrigeration cycle. How does refrigeration boil in the lower, right? The lower pressure side, right? Because boiling point goes lower when pressure is lower, and the higher the pressure it is, the boiling point goes higher too. So I try to explain all that, and I use anything that I could think of, and through the years I start learning how to describe electrical with plumbing, with traffic, with something that they understand already. A lot of times they could see water, so plumbing is usually how I could describe electrical, but then there are times they don't understand water either, so I go to, well, you drive, right? So I start describing it in driving. So I try to find different ways to make them understand the basics of things. And once they understand kind of the basic and they keep taking the classes, it kind of relates as far as networking, how information flows, right? It's the same thing as how water flows, how electricity, a little bit different, how air flows. So I just keep telling them, remember the basics of how things flows, and you'll understand more of, and then in electrical, going into controls, signals, right? A lot of different signals that you're dealing with. Just remember your other signals in electrical too. Usually you use voltage as a signal in electrical, but then now you're using resistance, you're using your switches there, which you use in the thermostat too. The thermostat is pretty much a bunch of switches in there, right? So just little things like that. Through the years that I'm teaching, I've always, find ways how I could make it so it's easier for the students to understand, right? So that's usually I feel like as a teacher is the goal, for it to be more understandable. So
yeah, especially, I think it's a challenging field, really.
Mm-hmm.
And basic electricity is the hardest class in the electrical program.
That's the class that things get broken all the time. Because you tell them, don't turn on anything until I seen your work, but some of them plug it in, because we have the board, a trainer, they'll just turn it on, just like, but of course, you know, we have a lot of little replacement for them, so, but yeah, the basic one is the one usually the hardest one, but once they get the concept, things kind of become easier for them down the line, right? Because they're not 100% the same, but how things flow will kind of be the same, how energy flows, right? Just like BTUs and all that, and now your water, your information, right? Yeah, so.
Do you teach them how to convert BTUs into watts?
Yes, yeah. So we teach them about that too. There's so much information that my mind could follow that I teach him that too. Like, I don't know everything, right? Yeah. There are times that I have to look at a book again to find reference of how it works, because there's so much we could cram into our brain and actually remember, especially if you're teaching that class once a year. Now you're moving on to these other classes, right? And that's actually one of the other things that I teach my students is you don't have to learn, like, you don't have to remember this forever, but at least in the back of your head, you know where you could find that information, or there's information about it. That's usually because that's the reason. Same thing with codes, right? No one could memorize the whole code books on any code books, unless you have a special brain that you could remember the whole code book. But other than that, I don't think. Yeah. So I always have to flip through again my code book from time to time. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. No. Well, it's great being here.